Cowboy saved the youngest sister. Tribal law declared all four were now his family. The people who lived there did not trust outsiders. They kept to themselves and followed the old tribal rules without question. Those rules were strict, and everyone obeyed them because the leaders were powerful. The law was not written on paper. It lived in the hearts of the people, and anyone who broke it faced serious punishment. In the middle of this town lived four sisters. They were known by everyone, but not in a good way. People whispered about them when they passed by. The oldest sister, Leela, was the one who tried to protect the family. She was only 19, but she carried a heavy weight on her shoulders. Her brothers were gone, and their parents had died long ago. The sisters had no one else to help them. They had to survive on their own, and they did it quietly without making trouble. The second sister, Mara, was 16. She was strong and brave, but she did not have the calm that Leela had. She often argued with people when they said something unfair. The third sister, Nina, was 14. She was gentle and kind, but she was also very quiet. She watched everything carefully, learning how to stay safe. The youngest sister, Asha, was only 10 years old. She was small and thin, with big brown eyes that always looked like she was about to cry. She was the most vulnerable of them all. Asha was not only young, she was also different. She had a soft voice and a gentle smile, but she also carried a sadness that made people feel uncomfortable. Some people believed she had a strange fate. They said she was cursed, but no one knew why. The sisters tried to ignore those whispers, but they could not ignore the way people stared at Asha when she walked past them. The sisters lived in a small house at the edge of the town. It was made of wood and clay, and it looked old and tired. The roof leaked when it rained, and the wind sometimes blew dust inside. But it was their home, and Leela had done her best to keep it clean and safe. She worked during the day in the town's market. She washed clothes, carried water, and helped with small chores. The pay was small, but it was enough to buy food. Every night the sisters gathered around a small fire. They cooked simple meals and talked quietly. They tried to laugh sometimes, but the laughter always felt forced. They were always afraid that someone would hear them. They knew the tribal leaders watched everyone closely. They knew that even a small mistake could bring trouble. They lived like prisoners in their own home. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned orange, Leela was returning from the market. Her arms were heavy with a bundle of clothes she had washed. She walked slowly because the road was rough and the heat still lingered. She saw people moving inside their homes, closing doors early. The town was becoming quiet faster than usual. Leela felt a strange feeling in her chest, like something bad was coming. When she reached the corner near her house, she saw a group of men standing together. They were dressed in simple clothes, but they looked strong and dangerous. They were the kind of men who never smiled. Their eyes were cold and their faces showed no kindness. Leela recognized them. They were enforcers of the tribal law. They were the people who punished anyone who broke the rules. Leela tried to walk past them without being noticed, but one of the men stepped forward. He looked at her bundle of clothes and then looked at her face. "Where are you going so late?" he asked. Leela's voice shook. "Home," she said, "to my sisters." The man laughed softly. "Your sisters, yes, I know. 4 girls living alone, that is unusual." "The tribe does not like unusual things." Leela swallowed hard. "We are fine," she said. "We follow the rules." The man stepped closer. Are you sure? The tribe has rules about families, about who can live alone. You know that, don't you?" Leela felt fear rise in her chest. "Yes," she said, "we know." The man's eyes moved toward her face. He stared for a moment, and Leela felt like he was trying to see inside her. "Your youngest sister," he said slowly, "she is special. People talk about her. They say she is different. They say she is not like the rest." Leela's heart beat faster. "She is just a child," she said. "She is innocent." The man smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Innocent? The tribe does not care about innocence. The tribe cares about rules. And the rule says you cannot keep her safe forever. Leela tried to step back, but the man blocked her path. The other enforcers closed in around her. Leela felt trapped. She looked at them, trying to stay brave. "Please," she whispered. "We are not breaking any rules." The man leaned closer. "We will see," he said. "We will see soon." Leela felt a cold chill run through her body. She did not know what they planned, but she knew it would not be good. She managed to pull her bundle closer and rushed home as fast as she could. Her heart was pounding and her legs felt heavy. She ran until she reached the house, then pushed the door open. Inside, Mara was already waiting. She looked up, eyes wide. "What happened?" she asked. Leela shook her head. "They were watching," she said. "They talked about a Shah." Mara's face turned pale. "No," she whispered, "not a Shah." Nina looked up from the corner where she sat quietly. She was holding a small cloth doll. "What did they say?" she asked softly. Leela sat down, trying to catch her breath. "They said the tribe does not like unusual things," she said. "They said the rule will not allow a Shah to stay safe." A Shah, who had been hiding behind the door, stepped forward slowly. She looked at Leela with scared eyes. "Are they coming for me?" she asked. Leela reached out and hugged her. "No," she whispered. "No one will hurt you, I promise." But the promise sounded weak, even to Leela herself. She could not stop the fear from growing inside her. She knew the tribe would not let them live quietly forever. She knew the law was stronger than her promises. That night the sisters sat close together, holding each other. The fire burned low, and the shadows on the wall looked like moving faces. The sisters did not sleep. They listened to every sound outside. They waited for the worst to happen. Meanwhile, outside the town, a stranger was arriving. He rode alone on a horse that looked tired but strong. He wore a long coat and a hat that covered most of his face. His boots were dusty, and his eyes were hidden in shadow. People in the town had seen him before, but they did not know his name. They only knew him as the cowboy who traveled alone. He did not come to the town for a long time. But now, he returned at a time when the town needed someone brave. He did not know the sisters yet. He did not know their story. He only knew the town was dangerous and the people in it were living under fear. The cowboy stopped near the edge of town and looked at the houses. He could feel the tension in the air. He could feel the fear. He had seen many places like this before, where people lived under rules they did not choose. He had seen families torn apart. He had seen children suffer. It made his chest tighten. He did not plan to stay long. He was a traveler. He was used to moving on. But something about this town made him pause. He looked at the small house where the four sisters lived. He did not know why, but he felt drawn to it. He pulled his horse closer and listened. He could hear a soft whisper inside the house. He could feel the fear. He did not know the sisters yet, but he knew they needed help. The cowboy did not make a sound. He only watched the house from the shadows, thinking about what he could do. He was not a leader. He was not a hero. He was just a man who had seen too much suffering. But he also knew one thing: if he did nothing, the sisters would be left alone. The night grew darker and the wind blew stronger. The town became even quieter. The cowboy stayed hidden, waiting. He knew something was going to happen. He just did not know what. The night air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on the small house. Inside, the four sisters sat close together, trying to stay calm. The fire was almost gone and the room was dark. The shadows on the wall seemed to move like silent figures. Every small sound made them jump. The wind outside made a soft whistling noise, and it sounded like someone calling their names. Leela held Asha tightly. Asha's small body shook with fear. She looked up at Leela with wide eyes. "Do you think they will come?" she whispered. Leela tried to sound brave, but her voice shook. "I don't know," she said, "but we must stay strong." Mara sat near the door, listening carefully. Her face was serious. She was ready to fight if needed. She looked at Nina, who sat quietly with her doll. Nina's eyes were full of worry, but she did not say anything. She had learned that silence was safer. Outside the house, the enforcers of the tribal law were moving in the shadows. They had heard rumors about the sisters. They had heard that the youngest one was different, and that she was protected by her older sisters. The leaders of the tribe wanted to see if the sisters were breaking the rules. They wanted to punish them if they found anything. The enforcers walked slowly, carefully. They knew the sisters' house was at the edge of town, and they wanted to catch them without causing a scene. The tribe had strict rules, but they also wanted to keep order. They did not want the town to panic. So they planned to take the sisters quietly at night when no one would see. The leader of the enforcers was a tall man named Rafe. He was known for his harshness. He believed the law was above everything else. He believed that the tribe's rules were the only thing that mattered. He did not care about the sisters' feelings. He only cared about the law. Rafe had heard about Asha. He had heard that she was different. He believed she might be dangerous. He believed she might bring trouble to the tribe. He thought it was his duty to remove her. He believed that by doing so, he would protect the tribe. He walked toward the house with his men. They stopped near the door and waited. Rafe raised his hand and signaled them to be quiet. Then he knocked softly on the door. Inside, Mara's eyes widened. She looked at Leela and whispered, "They are here." Leela's heart jumped. She stood up slowly and moved toward the door. She could feel her legs shaking. She held her breath and opened the door just a little bit. Rafe stood outside looking down at her. "Good evening," he said calmly. "We need to talk." Leela tried to smile, but it did not reach her eyes. "About what?" she asked. Rafe's eyes moved toward the inside of the house. He noticed the sisters standing close together. He noticed Asha's small face peeking out from behind Leela. He felt a cold feeling in his chest. "The tribe has heard rumors," he said. "Rumors about your youngest sister. We need to see her." Leela felt anger rise inside her. She knew what he meant. She knew they wanted to take Asha away. She knew the tribe believed Asha was different, and that difference was dangerous to them. "No," Leela said firmly. "She is just a child. She has done nothing wrong." Rafe smiled, but it was not friendly. "The tribe decides what is right," he said. "We will come in." Leela stepped in front of Asha, blocking her from view. "You cannot enter," she said. Rafe's eyes narrowed. "You are breaking the law," he said. "You are hiding her." Mara stepped forward. "We are not hiding her," she said. "We are protecting her. She is our sister." Rafe looked at Mara and then at Leela. "You are brave," he said. "But bravery is not enough. The law is the law." He reached out and tried to push the door open. Leela pushed back, holding the door with all her strength. The wood creaked under the pressure. Mara grabbed a small knife from the kitchen and stood ready to defend her sisters. Nina stood behind them, holding her doll like a shield. Asha clung to Leela, crying softly. The tension in the room was thick. The sisters were afraid, but they refused to give up. They had already lost so much. They had lost their parents, their home, and their peace. They would not let the tribe take Asha without a fight. Rafe's men pushed against the door from outside. The door moved a little and the sisters felt the force. Leela held tighter, her hands shaking. She looked at Rafe and said, "Please, we are not causing trouble. We just want to live." Rafe's voice was cold. "The tribe has rules," he said. "You cannot ignore them. You cannot hide what the tribe wants to control." Mara stepped closer, her voice strong. "What is the rule?" she asked. "What did she do?" Rafe's eyes looked away for a moment as if he did not want to say it. Then he spoke slowly. "She was seen near the river. She was seen speaking to the wind." The sisters froze. Asha's eyes widened in fear. She had been near the river that day. She had been watching the wind move the leaves. She had whispered a song to the wind because she felt lonely. She did not know that someone had seen her. She did not know that the tribe would use it against her. Leela felt her heart sink. She knew the tribe would call that a crime. She knew they would say Asha was doing something forbidden. She knew they would punish her for being different. Rafe stepped forward, his voice low. "The tribe believes she is cursed," he said. "The tribe believes she is not safe. The tribe believes she must be taken." Asha began to cry louder. She hid behind Leela, trembling. Leela's heart broke. She wanted to scream, but she stayed silent. She knew screaming would only make things worse. Rafe's men pushed harder. The door cracked. The sisters felt the wood give way. The room filled with dust. The air smelled like fear. At that moment a loud sound came from outside. It was a horse's hoof striking the ground. The sound was strong and sudden, like a warning. The men outside stopped for a moment. They looked toward the road. A tall figure appeared in the distance, moving quickly toward the house. The cowboy was riding fast. His coat flapped in the wind and his hat was pulled low. He looked like a shadow moving through the night. He was not afraid. He had seen the danger and he was coming to help. Rafe turned his head. "Who is that?" he asked. One of his men whispered, "It's the stranger, the cowboy." Rafe's eyes narrowed. "He is not our concern," he said. "Focus on the sisters." But the cowboy did not stop. He rode closer and his horse stopped near the door. He jumped down quickly and grabbed the doorframe with one hand. With the other hand, he pushed the door open with force. The door swung wide and the dust flew inside. The cowboy stood in the doorway. He looked at Rafe and his men. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He did not speak, he only stared at them as if he was measuring their strength. Rafe stepped forward, surprised. "What are you doing here?" he asked. The cowboy's voice was low and steady. "I'm here to stop you," he said. Rafe laughed. "Stop us. You cannot stop the tribe." The cowboy's eyes did not move. "I am not stopping the tribe," he said. "I am stopping you." The sisters watched in shock. They did not know who this man was. They did not know why he was helping them. But they felt hope for the first time in a long time. Mara looked at Leela and whispered, "Who is he?" Leela shook her head. "I don't know," she said, "but he is here now." Rafe's men moved toward the cowboy, but he was quick. He pushed one man back with a strong shove. The man stumbled and fell. Another man tried to grab him, but the cowboy dodged and stepped aside. He moved like he had done this many times before. Rafe raised his hand, signaling his men to attack. "Take him," he shouted. The cowboy stood his ground. He did not run. He did not hide. He was ready to fight. The sisters watched, their hearts pounding. They knew the fight could end badly. They knew the cowboy could be hurt. But they also knew that if the cowboy did not stop Rafe, Asha would be taken. The room was filled with tension and the night seemed to hold its breath. The battle was about to begin. The cowboy stood in the doorway, calm and strong. His eyes moved quickly from one enforcer to another. He did not speak much. He only watched them, ready to move. The enforcers were surprised by his confidence. They had expected the sisters to be alone and afraid. They did not expect someone to come to their rescue. Rafe stepped forward, his face full of anger. "You do not belong here," he said. "You cannot interfere with the tribe's law." The cowboy's voice was low and steady. "I do not belong to your law," he said. "I only belong to what is right." Rafe laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "What is right?" he asked. "You are just a stranger. You do not know the rules. You do not know the tribe." The cowboy looked at him with a steady gaze. "I know enough," he said. "I know a child should not be harmed." Rafe's eyes flashed. "You think you can stop us?" he asked. "You are only one man." The cowboy did not move. He only held his ground. The enforcers began to move forward, ready to attack. The sisters stood behind him, watching. Their hearts were racing. They did not know what would happen next. Mara stepped closer to Leela and whispered, "We should run." Leela shook her head. "We cannot leave her," she said, pointing at Asha. "We must stay." Nina held her doll tightly. She looked at the cowboy and then at the enforcers. She felt fear, but she also felt hope. The cowboy was fighting for them. He was not running away. He was protecting them. The cowboy moved quickly. He pushed one enforcer back with his shoulder. The man stumbled and fell. Another enforcer tried to grab him from behind, but the cowboy turned and knocked him away with a strong swing. The enforcers were surprised by his speed and strength. They had expected him to be weak, but he was not. Rafe moved closer, ready to fight. He had a long stick in his hand and he swung it toward the cowboy. The cowboy stepped back and blocked the strike with his arm. The stick hit his coat, but he did not fall. He held his ground. The sisters watched the fight with wide eyes. They could see the cowboy was tired, but he did not stop. He kept fighting, protecting them. He moved like a man who had been through many battles before. He was not a hero from a story. He was a real man who knew how to survive. Asha clung to Leela, her eyes full of tears. She looked at the cowboy and whispered, "Thank you." Leela heard her and felt her heart soften. She looked at the cowboy and wanted to say something, but she could not find the words. She had never met someone like him. She had never seen someone fight for them without asking for anything in return. The fight continued. The enforcers tried to surround the cowboy, but he moved quickly. He pushed them away one by one. He used his strength and skill to defend himself. The enforcers were strong, but they were not as fast as him. They were surprised by his moves. Rafe realized the cowboy was not an easy opponent. He became more angry. He shouted, "Stop fighting! You cannot win!" The cowboy did not answer. He only looked at Rafe with a calm expression. He knew he could not defeat all of them alone. He knew he needed a plan. He needed to protect the sisters and find a way to escape. The cowboy reached into his coat and pulled out a small bag. He opened it and took out a handful of dust. He threw the dust into the air. The dust rose like a cloud, filling the room with a thick fog. The enforcers coughed and covered their faces. They could not see clearly. The cowboy used the moment to grab Asha and lift her into his arms. Asha was scared, but she felt safe in his arms. She held on tightly, her small hands gripping his coat. The cowboy looked at the sisters and shouted, "Run!" Leela grabbed Mara's hand, and Mara grabbed Nina's hand. They ran out of the house, leaving the enforcers behind. The dust cloud made it hard for the enforcers to see, and they stumbled around, coughing. The cowboy pushed through the dust and followed the sisters. The sisters ran quickly through the narrow streets. They did not know where they were going, but they knew they had to escape. The town was dark and the shadows looked like dangerous shapes. The sisters moved as fast as they could, their hearts pounding. They reached the edge of the town, where the desert began. The moon was high in the sky and the sand looked silver. The sisters could see the open land ahead. They could feel the freedom in the air, but they also knew the danger. The desert was not safe. It was full of wild animals, and the nights were cold. But the desert was better than the town. At least they could run. The cowboy was behind them, carrying Asha. He moved quickly, his boots making soft sounds on the sand. He looked back once to see if the enforcers were following. He saw a few men coming out of the town, their faces angry. They were holding sticks and ropes, ready to catch the sisters. The cowboy knew they would not be able to outrun them for long. He needed a plan. He needed a place to hide. He looked around and saw a small rocky area nearby. The rocks formed a small cave. It was not big, but it was enough to hide. The cowboy ran toward the rocks. He carried Asha and reached the cave quickly. He placed her inside and covered her with a blanket. He then turned to the sisters and said, "Stay here, don't move." Leela looked at him, confused. "Where are you going?" she asked. The cowboy's voice was serious. "I will buy you time," he said. "I will distract them." Mara's eyes widened. "You cannot fight them alone," she said. "You will be hurt." The cowboy shook his head. "I have been hurt before," he said. "I can handle it." Leela wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She looked at the sisters and then at the cowboy. She could see the determination in his eyes. She could see that he would not give up. The cowboy stepped out of the cave and walked toward the open desert. The enforcers were getting closer. They were shouting and calling for the sisters. The cowboy raised his hands and shouted back, "Over here." The enforcers turned toward him, surprised. They did not expect him to be outside. They ran toward him, ready to catch him. The cowboy ran quickly, leading them away from the cave. He moved through the desert, jumping over rocks and sand dunes. He kept running, never looking back. The sisters stayed inside the cave, listening. They could hear the sound of the enforcers chasing the cowboy. They could hear their angry voices. The sisters held each other tightly, praying silently. Ashad looked up at Leela and whispered, "Do you think he will come back?" Leela swallowed hard. "I don't know," she said, "but we must trust him." Nina's eyes filled with tears. "I hope he comes back," she whispered. Mara closed her eyes and prayed. She had never prayed before, but now she did. She prayed for the cowboy. She prayed for their safety. She prayed for a miracle. The night was long and the sound of the chase slowly faded. The sisters waited, not knowing what would happen next. They were scared, but they were also holding on to hope. The cowboy had saved them once. They believed he might save them again. The cave was dark and cold. The sisters huddled together, trying to stay warm. The air smelled like earth and dust. The sound of the desert night was all around them, wind moving over the rocks, small animals moving in the sand, and the quiet silence that felt both peaceful and scary. The sisters sat close to each other, trying to keep their fear from growing. Ashas sat in the middle, wrapped in a blanket. She looked at her sisters with wide eyes. "Do you think he is okay?" she asked softly. Leela held her hand. "He will be fine," she said, but even as she said it, she felt doubt in her heart. She had never met anyone like the cowboy before. She did not know if he would come back. She did not know if he could survive the tribe's anger. Mara sat beside them, staring at the cave entrance. She was angry and scared. She wanted to fight. She wanted to run. She wanted to take a sha and leave, but she also knew they were in danger. The tribe was powerful. They could not fight them alone. They needed help. Nina sat quietly, holding her doll. She listened to the wind and tried to imagine a future where they were safe. She had never imagined such a thing before. She had always believed the tribe's rules were the only life she would ever know. Now, she was beginning to understand that life could be different. Outside the cave, the cowboy kept running. He ran as fast as he could, pushing his body to the limit. He could feel the sand under his boots, and he could feel the wind in his face. He could hear the enforcers behind him, shouting and running. He knew they were angry, and he knew they would not stop easily. He ran toward a distant ridge where the rocks were higher. He knew the desert well. He had traveled through many deserts and had learned how to survive. He knew how to hide. He knew how to lead people away from danger. He used his knowledge to move quickly and quietly. The enforcers followed him, but they were not as fast. They were heavy and loud. They were not used to running through the desert at night. They were tired, and their anger made them reckless. They shouted and called to each other, but they did not know where the cowboy was leading them. The cowboy kept moving, guiding them farther away from the cave. He wanted to make sure they could not find the sisters. He wanted to make sure the sisters had time to escape. He knew the tribe would not stop searching. They would keep looking until they found them, so he needed to buy as much time as possible. After a while, the cowboy reached a small group of rocks that formed a hidden path. He knew the path well. He had used it before when he needed to escape quickly. He led the enforcers into the path, but the path was narrow. The enforcers had to move slowly. The cowboy used this to his advantage. He ran ahead, then stopped and waited. The enforcers came closer, one by one. The cowboy turned and faced them. He was ready. He knew he could not fight them all at once, but he could slow them down. He swung his arm and pushed one man back. The man stumbled and fell. Another man tried to grab him, but the cowboy moved quickly and dodged. The cowboy's plan worked. The enforcers were delayed. They were angry, but they were also tired. The cowboy saw an opportunity. He decided to use a trick to make them stop chasing him. He stopped running and turned toward the enforcers. He shouted loudly, "Stop! I will not run anymore." The enforcers stopped for a moment, surprised. They were not expecting him to stop. They looked at each other, confused. The cowboy raised his hands and spoke in a strong voice. "You want to catch the sisters," he said, "but you will not find them. They are safe, they are gone. If you keep chasing me, you will waste your time." Rafe stepped forward, his face full of anger. "You think you can trick us?" he he shouted. The cowboy shook his head. "No," he said, "I know you will not stop. But I also know you will not leave the tribe's law behind. You will return to town and report what happened. You will tell the leaders that the sisters are gone. You will say that I escaped." Rafe looked at him for a moment. He was thinking. He did not want to admit it, but the cowboy was right. The enforcers could not chase him forever. They were tired. They were far from town. They would have to return and face the leaders. Rafe spoke in a low voice. "You will pay for this," he said. "You will not escape." The cowboy nodded. "Maybe," he said, "but you will not take the sisters." Rafe shouted and signaled his men to return. The enforcers turned around and began to walk back toward the town. They were angry and tired, but they knew they had to report what happened. They had to tell the leaders that the cowboy had escaped and the sisters were gone. The cowboy watched them leave. He waited until they were out of sight. Then he turned and looked toward the cave where the sisters were hiding. He could not see them, but he could feel their fear. He could feel their hope. He knew he had to return to them quickly. He ran back toward the cave. He moved fast, but he also stayed careful. He did not want to be seen. He did not want the enforcers to notice him. He reached the cave and entered quietly. The sisters looked up when they heard his footsteps. They were relieved to see him. Asha ran to him and hugged his leg. "You came back," she said, her voice full of relief. The cowboy knelt down and hugged her gently. "Of course I did," he said. "You are safe now." Leela stepped forward, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she said. "You saved us." The cowboy looked at her and shook his head. "I did not save you," he said. "I only gave you time." Mara spoke up. "Time for what?" she asked. The cowboy's voice was calm. "Time to think," he said. "Time to plan, time to leave." The sisters looked at each other. They understood. They could not stay here. The tribe would search for them. The enforcers would return. They needed to find a place far away where the tribe's rules could not reach them. Leela's voice shook. "Where will we go?" she asked. The cowboy looked out into the desert. He thought for a moment. He knew of a place far away where people lived freely. It was a small town near the mountains where the law was different. He had heard of it from travelers. It was a place where people could start new lives. He looked back at the sisters and said, "There is a town far away. It is not part of your tribe. It is a place where you can live without fear." Asha's eyes widened. "Will we be safe there?" she asked. The cowboy nodded. "Yes," he said, "but we must leave now. We must leave before the tribe finds us." Leela took a deep breath. She looked at her sisters and then at the cowboy. "We will go," she said. "We will follow you." Mara nodded. "We will fight if we must," she said, "but we will go." Nina hugged her doll tightly. "I want to live," she whispered. "I want to be free." The cowboy stood up. He looked at them with a serious expression. "Then we will go," he said. "We will leave tonight." The sisters prepared quickly. They gathered a few supplies, water, bread, and some clothes. They did not have much, but they had enough for the journey. They wrapped themselves in blankets and waited. The cowboy led them out of the cave and into the desert. The night was still dark, but the sky was beginning to lighten. The stars were fading and the first light of dawn was appearing. The sisters walked behind the cowboy, their hearts filled with hope and fear. They did not know what awaited them. They did not know if the tribe would catch them, but they knew one thing: they were no longer alone. They had someone who cared. They had someone who would protect them. As they walked, the cowboy looked back at the town. He could see the distant lights fading. He knew the tribe would soon realize the sisters were gone. He knew the leaders would be angry. But he also knew that the sisters had a chance now. The journey ahead was long and difficult. But for the first time in their lives, the sisters felt something they had never felt before: freedom. The desert looked different now. It was no longer only a place of danger. It was also a place of freedom. The sisters walked behind the cowboy, their footsteps soft in the sand. The early morning light made the desert look golden. The wind was cooler now and the air felt fresh. The sisters felt a small sense of hope, but they also felt the weight of what they had done. They had left their home. They had left everything they knew. They were now traveling with a stranger into the unknown. Asha walked close to the cowboy. She looked up at him with her big eyes. "Are we really going to be safe?" she asked. The cowboy looked down at her and smiled gently. "Yes," he said. "We will find a place where you can live without fear." Asha nodded slowly. She still looked scared, but she also looked relieved. She held the cowboy's hand tightly, as if she never wanted to let go. Leela walked beside them. She was tired, but she was also determined. She had been carrying the weight of her sisters for so long. She had been the one to protect them, to feed them, to keep them safe. Now, she was still the protector, but she also had help. She looked at the cowboy and felt a strange gratitude. She did not know his name, but she felt that he was more than just a stranger. He was someone who had chosen to help them without asking for anything in return. Mara walked behind them, her eyes scanning the horizon. She was still angry. She was still afraid. But she was also grateful. She knew that the cowboy had risked his life for them. She did not know why he had done it, but she felt that he had a good heart. Nina walked quietly, holding her doll. She looked at the desert and thought about her old life. She remembered the whispers in the town, the fear in the air, the rules that controlled everything. She remembered the day the enforcers came to the house. She remembered the fear in her sister's eyes. She remembered the cowboy's face when he entered the room. She remembered the moment he saved them. She felt tears in her eyes, but she did not cry. She was too afraid to cry. She did not know what the future would bring, but she also felt something else. She felt hope. The cowboy led them toward the mountains. The mountains were far away, but they were the only place he knew where they could be safe. He had heard stories about a small town near the mountains. The town was not part of the tribe. It was a place where people from different backgrounds lived together. It was a place where the law was different. It was a place where families could start new lives. The journey was difficult. The desert was not forgiving. The sun grew hotter as the day passed. The sisters felt their strength fading. They had been running for days. They were tired, hungry, and thirsty. The cowboy gave them water, but it was not enough to fully satisfy them. They had to keep moving. Leela looked at the cowboy and asked, "How much farther is it?" The cowboy looked at the sky. "Not far," he said. "A few more days." Mara frowned. "A few more days," she said. "We cannot survive that long. We need food." The cowboy nodded. "I know," he said. "We will stop at a small river soon. There is a place where we can rest and find food." The sisters felt a small relief. They had been holding on to hope, but now the hope felt real. They continued walking, their bodies tired but their minds focused. On the second day, they reached a small river. The water was clear and cool. The sisters rushed to the water and drank. They splashed their faces and felt the coolness in their skin. The water made them feel alive again. The cowboy found some small plants near the river. He gathered them and showed the sisters how to eat them safely. He also found a few small animals and caught them for food. The sisters were surprised. They had never hunted before. They had never needed to, but now they had to learn quickly. They made a small fire near the river. The smoke rose into the air and the sisters felt safe for a moment. They ate the food and the taste felt like hope. They talked quietly, sharing their thoughts and fears. Leela looked at the cowboy and asked, "Why did you help us?" The cowboy looked down at the fire. He thought for a moment. Then he spoke softly. "Because I know what it is like to be alone," he said. "I know what it is like to feel like the world is against you." Mara looked at him. "Were you alone too?" she asked. The cowboy nodded. "Yes," he said. "I had no family, I had no home. I traveled alone for a long time." Nina listened quietly. She felt a connection to him. She felt that he understood them. She felt that he had chosen to help them because he wanted to give them what he never had. Asha looked up at him and asked, "Do you have a family now?" The cowboy smiled softly. "Not yet," he said, "but maybe I will." The sisters looked at him, surprised. They did not know what he meant. They did not know how they could be his family. But the cowboy's words made them feel something warm inside. It felt like a new beginning. The next day, they continued their journey. The mountains were closer now. The town near the mountains was still far, but it was getting closer. The sisters felt a new energy. They walked faster, their steps more confident. They felt that they were moving toward a new life, but the tribe was still behind them. The enforcers had returned to town and reported what happened. The leaders were angry. They did not like being challenged. They wanted to show the tribe that their law was strong. They wanted to bring the sisters back. Rafe, the enforcer leader, was furious. He felt embarrassed that the cowboy had escaped. He felt angry that the sisters had escaped. He felt like he had failed. He could not accept it. He gathered a group of men and set out again. He wanted to find the sisters. He wanted to prove that the tribe's law was still powerful. He wanted to bring them back even if it took weeks. The cowboy knew this. He could feel it in the air. He could feel the danger. He knew the tribe would not stop. He knew they would keep searching. He knew they would come closer. The cowboy decided to change their route. He led the sisters through a hidden path in the mountains. The path was difficult, but it was safer. It was less likely that the tribe would find them there. The sisters followed him, trusting his knowledge. They climbed the rocky path, their hands gripping the stones. The air grew cooler. The mountains were tall and strong, and they made the sisters feel small. But the mountains also felt safe. They felt like a wall between them and the tribe. On the third night, they reached the small town near the mountains. The town was quiet and peaceful. The houses were small and simple. People walked around with calm faces. The sisters felt a strange sense of relief. They felt like they had finally reached a place where they could breathe. The cowboy led them to a small house on the edge of the town. It belonged to a kind woman who helped travelers. The woman welcomed them without asking questions. She offered them food and a place to rest. She did not know their story, but she could see they were tired and scared. The sisters felt safe for the first time. They slept peacefully that night. They did not wake up at every sound. They did not fear the law. They did not feel trapped. The next morning, the woman asked the cowboy, "Who are these girls?" The cowboy looked at the sisters. He looked at their tired faces. He thought for a moment. Then he spoke. "They are my family now," he said. The woman looked surprised. "Your family?" she asked. The cowboy nodded. "Yes," he said. "I will take care of them." The sisters looked at each other. They were surprised too. They had never thought of themselves as part of a family again. They had never thought of someone choosing them. They had never thought of being loved. Leela felt tears in her eyes. She looked at the cowboy and whispered, "Thank you." The cowboy smiled. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "We will build a new life together." The town welcomed them. The people were kind. They helped the sisters find work and a place to live. They taught them the new rules. They helped them heal from the fear they had lived with for so long. The sisters began to feel safe. They began to feel hope. They began to feel like they belonged. And the cowboy, who had once been alone, found a new purpose. He found a family in the four sisters. He found a reason to stay. The tribe never found them. The law never reached them. The sisters were free. They were safe. They were finally able to live their lives. And even though the journey was difficult and the past was full of fear, the sisters knew one thing clearly. They were no longer alone. They had a family. They had a home. They had a future.